Naj Uddin here from AARP, who will be delivering this session on enhancing the AARP member experience with AWS. So thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate. Wow. What a rock star welcome. Thank you, everybody. I wanted to thank Jesse and thank AWS for giving us the opportunity to talk about the AWS member experience that we've had at AARP. So let me jump right into it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the business landscape and the technology landscape at AARP because I think it helps frame the conversation of what we were able to accomplish. I'll talk about the problem definition. As we talk about in my team, it's really clear. It's really important to have a clear definition of the problem before you get started in solving it. So I want to share kind of what our problem was, some of the guiding principles we used, the constraints, and then talk a little bit about one aspect of it. It was a kind of a big mindset cultural change, but I'll talk about one component of that, which is the technical data center migration. Then I'll step back a little bit and talk about some of the lessons learned and then some of the outcomes. So what is AARP? AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to empowering people to choose as they age. We are a very complex organization, and I'll give you some examples of that. We are a strong advocate. We advocate both at the national level and state level on issues like Social Security, Medicare, caregiving, prescription drug prices. You might have seen some of these ads recently. We also have a strong career and workforce program. So we help older adults find their next career opportunity and try to get support for multi-generational workforces. We also have some direct service programs with over 60,000 volunteers. For instance, one of our programs, TaxAid, last year did about 2.5 million tax returns for people for free through the volunteer program. We also have a fraud network education program. This is all supported with our 38 million members. So to give you a sense of scale, and I'll kind of jump ahead to the answer of what we've been able to accomplish. Our unified marketing platform that we've built over the last year on AWS infrastructure is really a centralized view of how we view member engagements, all the way from advocacy to donations to direct mail and online campaigns. Since we launched earlier this year in March, we've launched 50 national campaigns and 300 state campaigns that have resulted in a slew of metrics, but including 1.6 million messages to Congress and 100,000 messages to state legislators. We've seen a 55% increase in the people who have took action compared to last year, and we were able to shift to a platform that is 90% self-service. So we use a lot fewer agencies, and our staff is able to use the technology themselves. So one of the other important things you guys might have heard of is the AARP magazine. So I guess I'm pointing all this out because from a technology viewpoint, we don't have a single business, a single mission. We have lots of things that we're supporting. So with that, let me go to the technology landscape prior to the migration. We had a traditional operating model, meaning we used to do projects in a waterfall methodology. We had a traditional business customer relationship internally, and we had siloed functional teams, meaning we had a team that did project management, a team that did development, a team that did QA, that sort of thing. We also had a variety of staffing. We had managed service providers, we had consultants, we had staff, we used software as a service, we had staff augmentation, and from a technology stack, we had 3 data centers, and I'll talk about the migration of one of those here, but about 760 servers and any technology stack that you can think of we had. So that's kind of what we were doing before. So what's the problem with that is? The problem is that we weren't able to meet the needs of the business in terms of being able to experiment, to serve more people, to advocate better, to raise fundraising dollars, to serve people, and the technology projects were long, complex, and we couldn't keep up with the needs of the business. In the business, we wanted we want to enable rapid experimentation and innovation, and frankly, our technology and our processes and our operating model didn't let us do that. So so that was the problem. So how do we fix that? So we had a series of guiding principles. So the first guiding principle is, wherever possible, we should go cloud first. We are not a data center company. AARP is a mission-driven organization. We should let people who are good at technology and running data centers do that work. So we want to also use a cloud-native tools. We also wanted to replace this functional mindset that we had and go to a product mindset. So one of the things I'm quite proud of is that we actually moved away from the functional model, functional silos, and we use a DevSecOps product team model, and we use agile, and that's a journey, and we're, I think, well on our way on that. We also wanted to develop our skills. Our staff didn't have the skills of either the technology or the way of working that we needed in the future. And like all of you, we also have constraints as well. We have financial constraints. And in this case, we wanted to make sure we kept a close eye on the total cost of ownership over the long term. We also had time constraints. We had a data center whose facility was on a lease, and the lease had a fixed end date. And then, like many of you, you got to keep the business going, right? So we wanted to make sure we supported the business as the business itself was evolving. They weren't sitting still and saying, hey, I know you're busy, go ahead and do your thing, we'll wait. There were things still going on in the business as well. We need to support that. So let me dive into the one aspect here, which is our data center migration. So on the left, you can see a picture of our data center. We had about 540 virtual servers. We had about 550 terabytes of allocated storage in that data center. It was actually not too far from here in Rockville, Maryland. Over the last, 14 months, we migrated to an AWS environment. So we have 763 servers, 100 apps. The database numbers are there, but I think quite impressively, we have 1.8 petabytes of S3 storage. So the shift from what we had to where we are now, really, we had 4 kind of broad areas that we were working on. First is we really revamped the technology and the tools that we use. As part of our shift to agile, we started being, I think, much more disciplined in terms of Jira and some of the other tools that we use for data analysis. We, of course, did this in the middle of the pandemic, and we had problems in terms of access to buildings and all those kinds of things. Remarkably, we were able to finish the project on time and under budget, actually. And then we also created an agile Scrum team. So this was, as part of doing this work, we created a new way of working with the team. And so that involved coaching, and that involved setting expectations and providing some assistance. And as I talked about, at the same time all this was going on, we were building new business applications as well. So there's a few lessons learned. I broke them into 3 categories. One is kind of before the migration, then during, and then after. So before the migration, it's really easy to do a lot of analysis and not start. So my advice is don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. In this part of the project, we concentrated a lot on financial modeling. And in financial modeling, it was really important to, I think, get a complete picture of what the financial situation is, and really even the current state. It sounds obvious, but if you're going to compare it to a future, you need to make sure you have the complete current state, and then identify upfront what costs are targeted for elimination. And then we also used the AWS Cost Explorer calculator, which really helped us get a good sense of what the opportunities were. And then making sure your cost model is complete by having all the one-time costs also included, like external partners, hardware, software, all the other things you need to do. During the migration, what we learned is some of this sounds basic. If any of you were in high school sports, your coach sets stretch goals, right? You want to set stretch goals. I mean, there's a natural tension between what the team feels comfortable with and what you want to accomplish. But I think you have to be careful and learn from each iteration. So we had sprints of every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we would sit down and say, what worked, what didn't work, how does that change the goals for the next 2 weeks? You want to coordinate the application, migration, and testing with the business. So there are some times of year that are very, very inconvenient for the business. We worked around those schedules. There are some things that we needed them to do, so again, we needed to coordinate those schedules. One of the other things we found is we had a commitment to make sure the applications performed as well or better than they did before. So the way we were able to do that is we did some automated load testing before and after, and so you have a point of comparison. We also, when you have a fixed budget, a fixed schedule, I guess the temptation naturally is, hey, let's lift what we got and move it, and let's call this done. I think you have to be judicious about when you apply that. Certainly there are some things that we did lift and shift. There are some things we refactored. There are some things we just dropped. So there was actually quite a bit of time I felt up front doing the analysis. Do we need all these things that we have? What's the right eventual disposition for them? As part of doing that, we worked closely with the AWS technical team to identify native services that could replace what we've been doing. And wherever possible, we took advantage of that. After the migration, what we discovered is the costs after you do a migration, the first month or two, they're really high, unexpectedly high. But you can use the cloud-native tools to kind of get those in control. There are services you don't need anymore. There's things that were sized for development. All those things can be scaled back. And I think that's one of the things we learned is that when you roll these things out, take a close look at what you're doing and what do you really need to operate as opposed to while you were in development and the migration. One of the other things we did was, even though IT bears a cost of this, we partnered with the business to show them the cost and the transparency that we have now. I think it really helped because there's often a discussion of, well, I want X, but X costs Y amount. Is this the right thing to do? And when your business partners are kind of sharing the same information that you have, those conversations wind up being, I think, a lot more straightforward, and I think people tend to do the right thing when they have the same information. We also, one of the things we wanted to do was not move things over to the cloud in a haphazard way. So one of the things we did up front is we created, with help from our experts, we used a firm called Smartronics to really create an environment that became the standard for how we move migrations over and how we moved the workloads over. It's really important to have good security practices, establish those good security practices, for example, and apply them over and over and over, as opposed to do it once and hope they get done over the second, third, 100th time, right? So a lot of that, and I think the experience about how you're going to keep track of costs, all those kinds of things have to be all baked in at the beginning before you start doing the work. So, as you can tell, I'm quite proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and we've gotten, I think, quite a bit done. In terms of some of the outcomes, I think we've achieved a lot of what, just get on the right page here, what we wanted to accomplish. So, for instance, we now are able to experiment and innovate on a more rapid time frame. We have, for instance, this next year, we have an organizational goal of doing in-market tests and taking them from, and I'm just giving kind of representative numbers, from a factor of 1 to 10 to a few years from now to 100, 150. So that's the kind of acceleration that we want to be able to see. And I think we have a good platform for being able to do that. We also have flexibility. We're able to empower our end users with the tools that they need. And we do this while keeping a close eye on costs and being able to always monitor costs. We actually monitor our costs on a monthly basis, and we make changes in the configuration based on how the costs are going. So I think these are good practices to have, and they build a strong foundation for the future. So let me give you another example of some of the things. One of the other applications that we built in this time frame was a consumer care system for our consumer care agents. This year, they supported 1.4 million cases. So these are people that have called into the call center for assistance, and so you can see that that's a lot. Most of those come in through the phone or through email, but I think more significantly in trying to keep up with the future, we also now process about 120,000 social media posts every month, and that's integrated into our technology. We weren't able to do that before. We also get about 10,000 social media conversations a month as well, so that's all powered by this platform. We also have increased the self-service. Our self-service of our digital properties has increased 62% over the last year, and our automated chatbots are a part of that. We now have automated chatbots have handled through the different channels about 45,000 different sessions. Now that's important because that gives people the right information at the right time in the channel they want at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I think that's an important part of what we've done. We've also, in this whole process, improved our security posture. We now have consistency. We're able to patch things quicker. We're able to identify things that seem kind of out of place quicker and be able to react to it faster. We have also stood up a virtual network operations center, and that integrates the remaining data centers we have and our cloud environment, so we're able to better monitor not only the performance, but uptime, but security for our system. So with that, I wanted to leave enough time for questions, and thank you. So I'll just open it up. I'd like to also, for questions after the session, some of my colleagues are here. I'll ask them to raise their hands in the audience, and so if you have questions, feel free to contact them as well. So I'll just open it up. Or you can watch me dance. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking the demographics of your customer base, as we age, we're more inclined to consume technology, right? So as your consumer base was more receptive to this, you had to pivot on that, right?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, and I think that was one of the unintended consequences, I'd say, of the pandemic. What we saw in the last, what's been now 18, 19 months, we have seen the adoption of technology by those over, particularly the age of 65, almost the same as it was in the previous 5 years. So what you see, and I'll use my parents as an example, my parents are now FaceTiming with my kids in a way that they never were able to do before, right? So I think what that has led for us as a business is to meet people where they are. So our state's organization, for example, they, prior to the pandemic, were running, I don't know, tens of thousands of in-person events that all switched in one day to 15,000 events, all virtual. And so I think that required us to develop the skills to be able to run high-quality events like that overnight. But you're absolutely right. I think we've seen that demographic change. And I would speculate that that's a change that's not going to go backwards. Yeah, we'll have to deliver our services both digitally and in person in the future.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, please.
You touched on, you said, I think, on one of your slides it showed 226 applications, and when you migrated, there were 100. And you touched on it, not just migrating as is over. How did you go through that process of deciding what applications to keep, what to modernize, and what to get rid of?
Yeah, actually the team that did that is right behind you, so they can give you the details. But I think it was painstaking work, going through each one and figuring out, A, what we have, what's running, what's valuable, talking to the business, do you still need this? And going through that exercise, is this a duplicative application with something else? And I would say that that's one of those things of doing the essential planning up front was really helpful, because why move something that nobody needs, right? But I think having that rigor to do that. At the same time, I think the balance is you don't want to do so much of that you never start, right? Because there's always more analysis that can be done. So I think the trick is finding the balance between the two things. Yeah.
How did you overcome the challenge of adopting an agile mindset for an organization that had traditionally been waterfall?
Yeah.
How have you adopted?
So the question, I'll just repeat it, is how did you overcome the challenges associated with going to an agile mindset with an organization that is traditionally waterfall? And we're still in the middle of this challenge. We combined it with a couple of different things. So we did the product team model. We did the DevSecOps kind of life cycle ownership of that model, and then we introduced Agile all at the same time. So this is a topic that I could speak for a week on. But I think part of the success factors are you need to over-communicate this. I feel that, sometimes my team would say, he says the same thing over and over and over, and I'm surprised at how many times I need to. So I think this is one of those things that people underestimate the people challenges associated with this kind of transition. And it seems obvious to us that go, hey, this is a better mousetrap. Everybody should use the better mousetrap. It's easy, right? It's really hard. And so I think that providing people the basics of change management, why you're doing this, what you're hoping to achieve, all that, that's just kind of the minimum. I think people have good intentions, they want to do this, but you need to help them with kind of a grounding, you need coaching, you need examples, you need role models, you need to celebrate success, you need to celebrate failure. You need to show them it's okay to try something and not succeed. We have organized programs in all the things I just said. And we do this on a bi-weekly basis, all right? And so, in fact, one of my team on the way over here was saying, hey, can we do some work, right? But this is the work. This is the things that I think will lead to long-term sustainable change. And you have to be conscious about it. So unfortunately, there's no single answer, but I would say you should try to understand where people are and that they want to do a good job, and you need to help them with the tools and the techniques to get there. Yeah, please, go ahead.
So don't be fooled. We started off this project in a waterfall fashion, and we came pretty quick. We were given 9 months to get out of our data center. And looking at all the work that we had, we came together as a team. And as Naj said, we formed a close-knit team, both with Smartronics and individual AARP members. And as we started working, even in that waterfall fashion, it came quick that there's no way we can get this work done in a traditional fashion. So as a team, we just put our heads together, and that's really, in my mind, what Agile is. It's a different way to think. It's not necessarily a way of doing things. You have to think differently, and that's really how we came out. So we broke within the team into different product lines to say, okay, these applications are definitely going to AWS. This group of 3 people are going to handle this. This group is doing this. This group is doing this. So we just divided the work, and every day, as we talked about it, if somebody had an issue, that was my responsibility. I take all blockers. You continue to work. You jump over into this track, and you move on. So the engine was running at 100 miles an hour the whole time, and then that's what I was doing, was pulling out whatever they needed, taking that over, whether it was talking to a business unit that said, hey, I was ready to go, but now I need to wait 2 weeks, and it's like, you can't wait 2 weeks. Who else can backfill you? We'll do all the heavy lifting that you need. So it really was focusing on what you needed to get done, no matter what, keeping that schedule going. So great team, both Smartronics was our partner in this. There wasn't anybody that you wouldn't think was part of our team, or, they had an AARP hat on from day one, and we got the work done.
Yeah, I think, just to echo what Bert was saying, I think there's two really important factors there. One is that Agile is not a series of things you do every day, it's a mindset change, right? And all too often, we still have people that go, tell me what I need to do, and give me the artifacts I need to produce, and I think that's part of it. And I think the second part is that teams are going to fail in some things, and that's okay. And I think we want them to fail on small things and learn from them and move on, right? So I think that's an important part of it as well. Again, it sounds basic, but you'd be surprised at how many people don't do this well.
Real quick, what's your next hurdle? Do you think the next peak, is it slope up, is the next big leap forward?
So it's interesting, this project, and it was part of a bigger framework called the Digital Business Platform Transformation at AARP, is a CEO-led effort. I, along with my partners in analytics and the consumer experience and membership, we meet with our CEO twice a month to go over, like, are we making enough impact on the business? We just recently successfully completed the first part of it, and we're looking forward to proposing some ideas for continuing the momentum. So I think this is some of these things that we're talking about here, we're trying to make it part of the DNA of how we think and how we operate. And frankly, doing this project helped us get a lot of credibility in the eyes of the C-suite, right? Because as you guys know, technology projects have a horrible reputation of going late, going over budget, and not hitting expectations. And I think we were able to hit all those things quite well and prove the business value that we've been able to achieve, and actually have the business say it, right? And we have stakeholder meetings where the business comes up and says, look at what we're able to accomplish. And I think that has helped create a foundation for the things we need to do going forward.
We do have time for one more. All right. I think we're at time. So thank you so much, Naj. Really, really appreciate your time. And thank you, everyone, for attending, too. As a reminder, please submit your feedback on the session app, so you can look for the session code in the session app. We really appreciate your feedback. There will be a brief break now, and then there'll be another session in this room starting at 2:50 p.m. The next session in this room is Accelerate Business Momentum During a Cloud Migration. So that'll begin at 2:50. So thank you so much, Naj. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody.